Thanks for joining us. Let's get right into it. Giulia, I wonder if you can just start by, I think our room is full of people who understand the importance of critical minerals, many folks in the industry, but many folks, perhaps like me, who know it's extremely important, see the numerous press releases that come from DOE and LPO and many other offices, and kind of nod at them and say, oh, that seems important, but don't understand how they all fit together. So what's the DOE kind of approach to critical minerals right now? And well, let's actually just start there. What's the kind of DOE grant strategy around critical minerals right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Robinson. At the DOE right now, we are thinking about energy transition. And historically, our energy system has been fully reliant on oil, gas, coal, extractive thermal resources. As we look to the future and the new cost-competitive technologies are reliant on critical minerals, we are thinking about how we actually shore up that base of resources that is going to fuel this new energy economy. So we are thinking about domestic processing and development of those resources in a safe and sustainable way. We are thinking about recycling, and we're excited to share more about our partnership with Cirba there. And we're also thinking about partnerships with international nations that may be great partners in extraction. We're preparing to attend the Critical Minerals G7 later this month and really see the need to put together a holistic strategy that really drives the way that we are choosing our investments at the DOE.
And what's the DOE range of capital available right now? If you're thinking about, just what kinds of companies are you talking to? What's the range of options that you have to kind of address the strategy?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of folks have come here to Deploy because they're curious about this new DOE and what's going on, hearing announcements about billions of dollars of investments. We actually, and this is perhaps a little known fact even to the DC experts in the room, with the passage of Bill and IRA a year ago, actually reorganized the DOE to span the full spectrum of technology commercialization and better approach the energy transition. That spectrum starts from research and development into what we call D&D, demonstration and deployment. So we have organized our programs, a mix of grant-like capital, which we call non-dilutive equity, up the way to debt financing by LPO, to actually span that spectrum and be able to meet companies where they are in that commercialization journey. So whether a project is coming out of a university lab and applying to our ARPA-E program to get that funding to get started, or is looking to build a facility that is going to cost several hundreds of millions of dollars, and the DOE is coming in as a partner to build that facility through our manufacturing and energy supply chains office. We are there to partner with companies as they grow, and that is the message we really want all of you to take away, that the DOE is prepared to be a scaling partner in this energy transition.
David, you've gone through the DOE process, and so I wonder if you could just quickly give us the story of what that interaction was like from first touch to now. I think significant funds have been transferred.
Yeah, I mean, like Giulia said, there's a lot of opportunity there for companies like Cirba Solutions, and we went through the process to get one of the grants, and we're doing some more work there with the DOE. It's been, quite honestly, it's been a really good process. The people there have come up to speed really quickly. I mean, this is a very new industry. Remember, the battery space is fairly new in North America and the United States, and I think the DOE has really reached out and tried to be a collaborative partner. It hasn't been a transactional type relationship. It's been more of a collaboration where we're working with the various partners, Chelsea Sexton and Jigar Shah's organization, and that group has been tremendously positive to work with, and we really have kind of learned the process ourselves, right? It was a new system that's been put in place, and they've hired a lot of people to help companies like ourselves through that process. So in my mind, it's been kind of a learning exercise the last year, but I think the more we're applying for different grants that are available and other things like Giulia mentioned, the loan program office has a program there that we're working on. that also kind of helps us really understand what the process is. But I think you're seeing a lot more efficiency, you're seeing a lot more interaction, and it's really been a collaborative effort, quite honestly. It's been something that I think has been a positive experience. I know there's a lot of different opinions about getting money from the federal government and things like that, but it's been a real positive experience for Cirba Solutions, and it's going to help enable us to really accelerate our growth.
Okay, so I do want to ask, so what was the example? Like you were, at some point Cirba was out there, and I assume you weren't talking to DOE, maybe you were talking to DOE from the moment of founding, but like, you were a company. Mm-hmm. Now you're a company that's been quite, had a very productive relationship with DOE. So just what was that early kind of first touch interaction? When were you like, DOE can actually play some roles here, or this is where we think non-dilutive capital might be useful? Just knowing, I think that among the many folks in the room, there's a lot of public servants who are like really curious and also trying to look for like the next Cirba.
Yeah. Well, look, I think, again, the DOE's been very active in this space. I mean, Secretary Granholm, if you know the Federal Consortium of Advanced Batteries, I mean, she's done a lot of work in this space for a long time. So DOE's been very active in the battery world for a number of years. Our interaction really was when the IIJA came out, when the the Inflation Recovery Act came out, we saw that as an opportunity to kind of help jumpstart our growth. And the interaction was just, we kind of knew some of the folks in the DOE, and really reached out to them on what are some opportunities for us to work with them to fund. And again, it was a new program, right? So we were all kind of learning, how does this work? What's the, what are the requirements? What's the due diligence look like? And help work through that process with them. But like I said, I think it's just been, it's been a collaborative effort. I think it's going to go faster. I think, we're seeing efficiencies already in some of the work we're doing with the newer applications that we're submitting, and it's an educational process. Remember, this just started, a year ago, basically, right? So, even if you're in a company, you started something a year ago, it takes a long time to get people educated on the process. And then, again, DOE's wanting to make some really good bets. They're wanting to invest money, taxpayers' dollars in investments that are going to deliver what the promise is, which is accelerate the battery supply chain for North America.
So let's talk about, for a second, that battery supply chain. Cirba is in recycling. So what's the role of recycling in that eventual North American battery supply chain?
Yeah, I'm a little biased, but I think recycling is going to play a huge role. We in the near term, there's obviously a lot of buildup of material that needs to occur, and vehicles, for example, on the road that need to eventually come off the road, and those materials need to be recovered. But if you fast forward just about 4.5 years from now, by 2028, our plan is to be able to recycle and recover enough critical minerals like lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese that can actually be used to build another 1 million electric vehicle batteries, right? So that's a pretty big number when you think about the opportunity for us to recycle those critical minerals that are coming out of everybody's got a cell phone or an iPad, but also, electric vehicle batteries that have been on the road for the last 10 plus years. So that's it's not gonna, be a completely closed loop system for probably another 2 decades, most likely. In 2040-ish timeframe, it starts to look really, like a significant portion of the material required for batteries is going to come from recycled content. But we have to start somewhere, right? The only way you get there is you start and do it today. The lead acid industry has been around for a long time. The aluminum industry, plastics, you start to see those industries start to close the loop a little bit more, and that content for batteries is going to be there as well. What's
a good analog to think about the role of recycling in this industry? Or what's an industry you look at, you're like, okay, that's what a mature, like recycling component.
Yeah, everybody likes to use lead, right? Lead's a good example. 95% of lead acid batteries are recycled today, and that material is recovered and put back into a new lead acid battery. So that's the easy one to kind of as an analog. But if you look at things like the aluminum industry, that's also another one where there's a lot of recycled aluminum that goes back into materials. I think the plastics industry has made a massive push over the last 10, 15 years as well. But there's examples out there where this circularity and being able to develop a sustainable supply chain for a region is viable.
Giulia, obviously recycling can't contribute until the 2040s, apparently, most of our mineral needs. So what's happening on the other side? What's happening to bring new minerals in and scale up that supply chain?
Yeah, I mean, so I think recycling can already make an important contribution in quite a few mineral categories today. It's important to think about, 2 primary sources from recycling. One, of course, cars on the road that are running their end of life, and those batteries needing to be repurposed and ultimately recycled, but also manufacturing scrap. As we're seeing new gigafactories come online here in the U.S., our office is funding a lot of activity in that space, LPOs as well. We're going to be seeing scrap rates 20, 30% as those factories ramp up in the first couple of years. And all of that material needs to be recycled and go into new batteries. So I think we absolutely do see that as an important resource. I think we again also see the importance of really drawing on these critical minerals here at home, in a sustainable way. We have, for a long time, been dependent on other countries to import that finished material, already mined, already processed, and have in some way turned a bit of a blind eye to how those products come to be. And I think it's an opportunity that we have to really revolutionize how we think about mining. Our Brad Crabtree in our office here at DOE is leading a Mine of the Future initiative, which will grow to really think about how we process tailings more efficiently. All of these practices, and again, we're also looking very openly at our partnerships with other countries to be able to supply everything that the U.S. needs to stably and sustainably move into that EV transition.
Mm-hmm. I think just one thing to add too, we talk about mining and being able to extract minerals, right? That's a critical thing, and that's going to continue to need to occur, right? We're going to have to continue to mine materials out of the ground. But if you think about that resource is just above ground right now, right? It's in our pockets. It's driving around on the roads. It's in gigafactories, like Giulia mentioned. That is a resource. It's a resource that's above ground now, and we need to find ways to make sure that we effectively capture that resource and recover those minerals.
And the consumer electronics battery recycling rate is something like 5%.
Yeah.
We can do better. We see lead acid sitting at 95.
Okay, so wait, when the new iPhone just came out,
yeah,
people are mailing in their old iPhones. What is happening to the batteries in those iPhones? Are they just sitting around right now?
Well, if you're mailing it in, it's typically going to a program that's being recovered. Sometimes those things are refurbished and sent to another country potentially. But again, if they're end of life, a lot of those materials are coming and ending up hopefully in Cirba Solutions plants to where we're recovering those materials. So we get a lot of consumer electronics materials. But like Giulia said, there's so much more opportunity out there. And again, all of you in the audience, send your phones and iPads and stuff like that to Cirba Solutions. But no, in reality, there's a huge education opportunity there for the consumer is how do you give the opportunity for a consumer to either recycle and recover those materials? It could be power tools, it could be your cell phones. All those materials are easily recoverable, and companies like ourselves can do that.
Obviously, DOE, the government, is doing a lot. Cirba is doing a lot. I think when you look at the amount we're ramping up supply chains, it looks like it's 400, 500 gigawatts by the end of the decade, which is exciting. But I think we still have to get a couple more 100 gigawatts to meet the president's 2030 goals. So how do we close that gap? Because on the one hand, I feel like everyone's very busy and perhaps at capacity. On the other hand, being at capacity doesn't mean we're going to meet that goal. So how do we close that last gap to get to the 2030 mark?
Yeah, we're looking at the 2030 mark. We're looking at the 2050 mark. We see it's going to take $1 trillion of investment, by 2050 to get there, to build all of the infrastructure and manufacturing capacity to drive this energy transition. That equates to roughly $300 billion of investment every year. This past year, with everything that we've all collectively in this room been working on, we've gotten to about $140 billion. That's less than half of the rate that we need to be investing at to be able to achieve this energy transition. And that, I think it's really eye-opening. We need to do more. The role that we see that we have at the DOE is to de-risk some of this investment. I think I just came from Climate Week where I was meeting with investors all week at various levels of the risk journey, from very early stage VC to some of the larger banks. And there is a large appetite to invest in the energy transition, but it's not something that everyone necessarily has a track record in doing. And the margins don't look like SaaS margins. This is hard infrastructure investment, We're talking about DAC plants, we're talking about gigafactories, we're talking about hydrogen facilities, real capital projects that have a real disconnect between when you put money in the ground and when you get product out. And so the DOE sees a clear role for us to be at the table, to validate those investments, to de-risk them, to invest at the project level alongside with the private sector investor, and to start to kick off some of this flywheel and really build out that economy.
I realize we may not know the answer here, but how far do you think we are from having that flywheel be slightly self-sustaining? Because it is funny, right? We don't talk about like meeting the country's 2030 compute goals or meeting the country's 2030 smartphone goals. We just know there's going to be enough investment to have enough smartphones for everyone who wants one in 2030 or can afford one. How do we get there? How far are we from getting to a place where that's the case in minerals? And do you think we'll ever be in that place, or it's just mines are such large projects, they're so capital intensive, they're so difficult to execute that we may never actually get there on some of this hard tech?
No, I mean, I think it certainly is the trillion-dollar question, but we are. The system that we envision is one that is very different than the one that we've been operating in. That future system is not just extractive. It is one that's much more efficient and circular. And so we do have an opportunity to get there, but it requires really that holistic investment strategy and holistic understanding of what do I have already above the ground, and can I use that in perpetuity? How do I think about sustainable processing and manufacturing? We are today actually making a big announcement this morning about a partnership that we're driving with 12 different states that is focused on advanced manufacturing techniques for small and medium manufacturers. Mm-hmm. So over 90% of the manufacturing base in the United States is driven by companies that have less than 1,500 people. And these companies are often lagging in terms of production efficiency, the large companies, by up to 60%. We need to address those problems, and we're really proud to put DOE dollars in kind of attacking the system and recognize that there are going to be a few kind of landmark investments, but we also have to really raise the tides to be able to get there.
That always seemed like an underappreciated aspect of the hub strategy to me. We have these hubs, everyone talks about them. The kind of big question is who's going to get the contracts for them. Mm-hmm. But the thing about hubs, at least in other places they've been implemented, is you get all these small to medium manufacturers creating the ecosystem
Absolutely.
Around the hubs.
And I brought the 12 states in my notes. I have not memorized a long list of states since I helped my parents with their citizenship exam as a kid. But I won't read them out. But we are really investing coast to coast, from blue states to red states, to really help advance manufacturing. And there will be more programs and more opportunities. And we hope that folks are going to be able to come and engage with us and access them. But it's the hubs. It's also engaging locally in each area towards the needs of each community.
David, as we were talking about earlier, there's lots of DOE folks in the audience, and so this is our chance. This is your chance. Jigar often talks about the transition being private sector-led, government-enabled. So what could the government do better to better enable the transition, especially in your line of work?
Put money in our bank account quicker. Just kidding. No, in all honesty, I think it's again improving the efficiency, right? We've got a lot of opportunity in this space. This industry is growing very fast, right? This isn't something that's going to take decades to just generate a market. The market's there, right? The dynamics are there for us to capitalize. I say us, the United States, to capitalize on the electrification of a transportation system. And I think where DOE can help, and where I think this public-private partnership is important, is how do we do things faster, right? How do we get checks written? And I say that kind of off cheek, but how do we get funding out faster to companies, right? It does take time. You got to negotiate terms and conditions. There's obviously, when you're dealing with money, there's a lot of checks and balances there to make sure you're spending it on the right things. But how do we kind of just really accelerate that process, right? Of getting, once the grant's been awarded, how do you get to the end game real quick, where you can actually start to apply your cost share dollars against the dollars that the DOE can provide us?
How long are those timelines right now?
It depends.
Yeah.
I know our experience.
You can talk about them.
Yeah, our experience.
Yeah.
We got awarded in October. We actually finished the negotiations probably in May, June timeframe. So it took a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we were one of the first companies to actually be awarded and actually start to apply against that funding. There's other things you have to go through, environmental kind of reviews and stuff like that, which is really critical to make sure companies are doing the right thing from the environment. So we were happy to go through that process. But I think it's going to speed up now. The process is there. Everybody understands kind of the rules of engagement, so to speak. So I think you'll see an acceleration of that going forward. And I think that's the thing is, no one likes to use the example, but like China's been doing this for 15 years. They've been pumping money into the economy. You can argue whether it's good money or bad money, but they've been pumping money into their infrastructure to build up a battery supply chain in China, and it's massive today. We see what's going on there. We all understand that. That's why we're doing here what we're trying to do which is domesticate this for us. I think that investment has to continue to come our way, and that partnership. Again, companies are plowing billions of dollars on the ground, right? So this is not we're not just sitting there waiting for everybody to give us a bunch of money. We're putting a lot of money in the ground as well as companies, and we're, not a large company, but we're putting a significant amount of capital in the ground, and others are as well. So we just got to accelerate that.
What else has to change policy-wise? Is there enough money out there, even right now, to kind of, let's say, compete with China to meet the 2030 goal?
No, there's probably not. We got to invest more, right? I think the answer is no. We need to invest more. I think the other thing we can do is just really educate people on this circularity, right? The goal is to make sure that as we extract minerals or minerals make it in the way to our country, that we don't let them leave the country, right? We continue to recycle and recover those materials, because that's really where you're going to get a sustainable kind of supply chain. And what's the end of the game here, right? We're trying to reduce cost, right? Reduce cost of a battery, reduce cost of an electric vehicle. All those things factor in. So as we can continue to recover materials, it's going to have a lower cost. And not to mention, recycled material has about a 40 to 60% lower carbon footprint. Mm-hmm. So, right, if you go back up 100,000 feet, the name of the game here is reduce our carbon footprint, right? We're trying to reduce greenhouse gases and reduce our carbon footprint. So let's not lose sight of why we're here.
In terms of there not being enough funding yet, I think some folks, that's obviously a question that would require Congress. And I think when you look at Congress on this, you can begin to see what I would describe as a climate journalist as like a fatalism caucus, but which I think makes an argument that's quite compelling, which is like, look, this is a very expensive business. It's low margin. It's not very profitable. It's not where our expertise is. It's highly disruptive to communities that, might get a mine in them, for instance. And it just detracts from the fossil fuel industry and all the fossil fuel dependent industries where America's always been a global leader. So why should we invest in this in the first place?
Yeah, my last comment, right? We're trying to reduce our carbon footprint, right? That's a big thing here is trying to have an impact. We all kind of want to be around, or at least our generation of family want to be around the next 100 plus years. So I think we've got to do something to impact the climate issue that we have. I think the other thing with respect to that, it takes time, right? These industries, oil and gas didn't develop, coal didn't develop overnight, right? It wasn't like, the government put 10 years of investment in it, it came overnight. They also had peaks and valleys where it wasn't a great business, and then it's a good business, and it's not a great. So it has cycles as well. Every business has a cycle. So I think we've got to look at this. This is the next, I hate to use the word energy transition, but this is the next transition that we're trying to make for this country and how we actually deploy and move people and resources around. So it's something that's going to take, I think, decades for us to be good at. It takes time to build a business. Profitability, if you go back and look at all the battery manufacturers that are out there today, they're making pretty decent margins now. They weren't 5 years ago, 6 years ago. They were losing a lot of money, but now over time they've got their costs down. They've built up an infrastructure to be able to be profitable.
Do you think, the oil industry is so, as we've just seen, is like this high profit, low profit, or even negative cash flow business with like huge swings? Is that what a mature battery industry would look like, or do you think it'll be much more kind of dependable?
I think it'll be much more dependable. Again, especially if we recycle, right? We're getting to be, again, lithium, nickel, cobalt, you can recycle them thousands of times. They don't disappear. They don't turn into carbon, right? So So we have the advantage of being able to recover these materials. So I think there's going to be less cyclicality because we'll have access to these materials. And over the next couple decades, it's going to, you're going to create this circular supply chain where you're not going to be dependent on bringing materials in or be dependent on what OPEC does or other countries do, right? It's going to be something we can kind of control ourselves.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on that, I mean, I think this theme of controllability is one that's really important, and even in a partisan dialogue, we're all coming off of the pandemic and the supply chain shocks that everyone experienced. As there are more extreme climate events, everyone feels those ripple effects equally, and I think that really brings to life the importance of being able to have a supply chain that is more stable. We're of course thinking about policy levers like a critical mineral stockpile in the meantime to be able to provide that stability as we transition. But this battery economy and critical minerals economy is one that will look and feel very different than the petroleum-based economy we've been experiencing.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David.